Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Elephants. I'm your host, Destiny Farley, and today I'll be interviewing Valeria Gurr, who is a senior fellow for a national nonprofit organization called the American Federation for Children, or AFC for short. Valeria earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Relations with a minor in marketing at a university in Chile in 2009. And then she got her Master of Arts degree in Journalism and Media Studies here at UNLV in 2013. She's currently completing her PhD in Public Affairs at UNLV as well. Now, AFC, the nonprofit she works for, is an organization that works to create more options for school choice in states around America. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with school choice, it's basically the belief that parents should be able to choose the best school for their children, whether that be charter, private, magnet, public school, etc., and that the government funds should then follow the student to that school of their choice. Right now, in many states around America, not every school is federally funded, so school choice would work to change that structure a bit. Anything that requires the federal government to come to an agreement on how to appropriately allocate funds seems to be a very contentious issue, and they very much struggle to do it. So today I'll be going into some of the specifics about school choice and the American education system as a whole. But before doing that, Valeria, can you just briefly introduce yourself and then give us a little bit more background than I did as to what school choice is as a whole?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here today with you talking about one of my favorite issues. I'm very passionate about school choice. And as you mentioned, I'm originally from Chile. I came to the U.S. with no intention to stay, but then there was my husband, and I followed love, and I've been married for 14 years, and I have a beautiful boy called Owen. Nevada became my home. So I used to work. So when I graduated from college here at UNLV at the University of Nevada with a master's in journalism and media studies, I was very passionate about education, and it has been an issue that I always care about. And I actually went to work for the teachers union, and I worked for them for 2 years. And it was my first introduction to politics in the state. Being able to work for them took me to Carson City and to see how the system worked. And I realized quickly that the system was very broken, that we continue throwing money at an issue. And the reality is, you are seeing the headlines today. You have a rally of thousands of teachers after the governor passed record funding for the state, $2 billion. $2 billion for anybody that is listening is a lot of money, plus $250 million for teachers' raises, and the teachers have to take the streets and being still bargaining for a decent pay. So I realized that sometimes a lot of good intentions, but the reality is that this system and the teachers' union and the bureaucrats have essentially a monopoly, and they believe that their kids are, for them to only be able to serve them. And year after year, in visiting the schools and seeing how the reality is, that's something that opened my eyes to a school choice, and maybe we need to start thinking about reform and how we really change the system that is failing communities. Year after year, I've been living in this state for over 15 years now, and nothing has changed in that time. And the advocates before me used to say the same. Nothing has changed. We continue rank at the bottom. And the reality is that, we have seen that the system doesn't work. We have all the data, empirical data. The NAEP score shows that our kids are not reading at grade level. They're not performing in math. And we just simply continue saying the same. So school choice, essentially what it is for me, is the civil rights issue of our time. And what it says is that regardless of your income, regardless where you come from, regardless if you are poor or not, you should have the right to go to a school that is served your kids' individual needs. And it addresses some of this injustice. If you live in a poor area, you have to be assigned to that area. And that's how I became very, very passionate, because I come from Chile. And if you think about the system in Chile, when I came and immigrated from Chile to the U.S., I thought that this country will have it more put together. And they will understand that if you, essentially you are a low-income person, you should have access to a quality education. If not, you are going to have to stay living in generational poverty year after year. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I came running away from. And to find it in another country that is supposed to be one of the most developed country in the world, to realize that some of the same issues were happening also here, it was eye-opening to me.
Yeah. So how does school choice come into play? Like, what is school choice doing to fight generational poverty and to give people more access to better educational opportunities?
So in simple words, if you are going to a school that is failing you, for like several reasons, and what I hear particularly in the state of Nevada is that there's a lot, the classrooms are like overcrowded. There is too many kids, and the teachers are not able to keep up with that. And like, can you blame them? They have 40 kids in a classroom. What ended up happening is some kids get the attention that they need, and the other half doesn't. So those kids start thinking, like either misbehaving, other ones are bullying the other ones. The parents come and, essentially say, like, the system is not working for me. So what a school choice does is give you the opportunity to exit that when the system is not serving you. And for the ones that the system is serving them well, they're allowed to stay. But in this particular state, we almost have no choice. The only choice that we have is called public choice, which is charter schools. And they outperform the public schools significantly. Howsoever, there is not enough charter schools in areas, in low-income areas that we need it most. And even the cities try to open different charter schools and change the regulations because they want to bring them, because they do much better job with less funding. They do more with less, and they don't receive capital funding, which is essentially the ability for them to be able to pay for their schools, buildings. They receive less money than the traditional public schools, but they do outperform the public schools. So there is long waiting list at this time, and a lot of parents try to access to it.
Okay. And why? So what you're saying makes sense to me. And if you were to present that argument to any parent or any, standard civilian in the country, I don't see why they would disagree. So why is there a party divide on this? Why do Republicans tend to support it and Democrats tend to oppose it?
So it's a very interesting, they're in Nevada, it's a little bit different than other states. So you have the state teachers union and you have the local teachers union. The local teacher union is the one that I actually work for. They actually don't care about this issue because they know that they have their own issues. So they don't take a position. It's not necessarily that they support it, but they don't take a position and they leave a school choice alone. Howsoever, the state teachers union completely disagree, and they both are engaged in elections. So there is a process to elect elected officials, and they have taken a position that they don't support this issue, and it has become a highly partisan issue because of that. And it's not just in this state. That particular issue, the partisanship, is all across the country. So the national union, the NEA, decided that, hey, we're not going to support school choice because they see it as a threat. They essentially think that all the money belongs to them and not to the students. So even if we're saying rational arguments such as, hey, we are not disagreeing with you, it's not one versus the other, but you have to understand that choice exists between us and we're all different. And even if you fight it, there's always going to be a percentage of kids that are simply not going to do well in the traditional public school system. So the reason why they fight it is simply political. The teachers union tends to support Democrat candidates, and they have taken a position against it. And this used to be, back in the day, a Democrat issue. But the teachers union decided that they didn't support it because essentially they have had a monopoly for the longest time. And you look at all the NAEP scores and all the empirical data, and it shows that community scholars in almost every single state, and particularly in Nevada, kids are not reading at grade level, not performing in math, and we continue being behind. So it is it is a very, very sad thing to see so many people oppose it, when the reality is that we should be looking at different ways to educate communities that have been underserved for generations.
So it's mainly a funding issue then. I guess with any political issue, it usually comes down to funding. But with this one in particular, it's
a fight over money. Yeah, it's a fight over money and not a fight about, hey, yes.
What matters, which is
the kids. And that is a really unfortunate thing, is that kids complain. You look at the news, you see bullying, you see, I hear from moms basically telling me this. Hey, my kids were forced into a gang. I had to pull them out. It wasn't that I hated the public school system or CCSD. I had no option. Like if I didn't take my kid out, my kid would have to join a gang. And there is no supervision, there's no accountability, and we continue investing in a system that has basically said, I need more money every year. Every year they need more money, and you've seen it. I mean, commerce tax, marijuana tax, like every single tax every single year. And they screw the teachers and the kids every single year.
Okay, so if school choice were to be implemented, like school choice policies would be implemented across the country in every state, how would the funding work? Like, where would the funds go?
There are different types of programs across the state. In Nevada, we have what is called a tax credit program. A tax credit program essentially comes from donations from businesses in exchange of tax credit. So the money is not 100% warranty, and it doesn't come necessarily from the same account as the education money comes from. So that's a very important distinction because essentially, sure, money comes from the state revenue in exchange of a tax donation, but doesn't come from the same account. So nothing with a warranty. So like when they say this money is taking money away from public schools, they're essentially misleading the community and saying that this money would go to them when it would have never had. So right now in this state, we only have one program. It's called the Opportunity Scholarship. It's a small tax credit program that has 1,400 students participating that do not pass more than 300% of the federal poverty line, which is $63,000 a year. No, sorry, like that changed because in this year. So it's about $90,000 a year for a family of four. It used to be $83,000 last year. Howsoever, the students participating in the program, the families do not make more than $53,000 a year. So these are very low-income families that are accessing to an option because either the school district wasn't serving them correctly, and this is what I hear for like most of the, like at least the 26% of Hispanic moms. This is what they say. Hey, we tried. The school was overcrowded. There was a lot of violence, and we didn't feel safe. And I had to like find another solution. I never thought in a million years that I would be able to find a scholarship that would help me to pay for private education. And I'm so, so grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned, which is this argument that people make. This is like a big part of why there's contention around this issue. And it's this idea that school choice would steal funding away from public schools. Now, I don't know if that's a message that's propagated and disguised as something that like, oh, you're stealing money from us, this is going to hurt the kids, but in actuality, it's just because they want more money, or if it actually does impact the kids. I was watching like a news clip last night from this debate in Indiana, and it did a good job because it showed both sides, and it was someone at a charter school, like a charter school principal that used a voucher program, and like a third of their revenue came from voucher programs where, I can't remember exactly how the voucher program works, but kids would enroll in the school with a voucher. And then on the other side, the public school in that same county was saying, obviously the other school was saying this helps us, and then it flashed to the public school principal who's saying that this hurts us and said, we're losing kids and teachers to school choice programs every year. And her argument was that when you're a public school, you have to serve anyone that walks through the door. So that includes someone that has disabilities, someone that's an English language learner, any sort of special attention that they might need or different type of education. They're still obligated by law to educate that person. Whereas charter schools, magnet schools, private schools have a selection process where they can kind of filter who comes in and who comes out. So her argument was that we need the funding and we need the resources more than these other schools. So that's how it hurts us.
Yeah, it's a flooded argument. So sure, the money doesn't belong to one system. I've been saying that over and over and over. But they always act like they're like poor us, like our school essentially is going to get defunded. If that school is not serving the community, the reality is that school shouldn't have the funding. Only unhappy parents leave. Nobody leaves a system that is working for them. Now, charter schools, like a couple things that I like don't make sense in this, and I just wonder if like this is the right information that we're providing. So charter and magnet schools are also public schools. Mm-hmm. So I haven't seen any charter schools taking different type of scholarship programs, like to fund their own public schools. Most of the time, charter schools receive less money than the state allocates to traditional public schools, but they receive some public funding. So they're also an option that is a public option, and is one of like a very popular option all across the country, and in many different states they have it. So you're going to see that some schools and students are going to leave when that school wasn't doing like the other argument is that what they should have disclosed is why parents are leaving. So like, why do you leave? Mm-hmm. Like, parents are going to want to stay if that school is good. You don't leave your school. Like, there's an emotional connection made to the school that is beyond academics. And the research shows essentially that in many different cases, parents like value academics and good good proficiency in English and math. Howsoever, they value other things on top of those. And security is among one of the first ones. Security, bullying, like feeling satisfied and listened and heard by the school. So when yes, they're gonna lose people if they're not doing a good job. But also, like, if you look at states like Florida, for example, where we have one of the largest tax credit programs in the country, they have over 185,000 students in the program. What essentially happened is that it helped the public school system, because what it did, it created a system in where the ones that were unhappy were able to find an option, and they were like, just like in Nevada, at the bottom, and in less than few years, they became third in the country. Mm-hmm. So like, I think that there is an assumption here, hey, like all these teachers can do a great job with all these students, and the reality is that no school can do a perfect job with all the students. And they should be honest on that. And I've seen a lot of, for example, Hispanic communities here. Our kids get diagnosed as they had a disability, in many cases where the only disability they had is that they had English as a second language. And their learning is slower, but they diagnosed them as they had a problem, and they never had it. And when they move them into a different school, these kids are able to get the one-on-one attention they needed, and they just realized that the kids just learned differently because it was like had English as a second language. But also, there is a misconception that there is private schools that will not take children with disabilities. I've seen plenty of cases in where when the private school can handle and help the case, and they see it case by case because they have less funding to deal with this issue. So like, public schools get more money for children with disabilities, and that's why they have say, hey, we do a better job. They don't have to take these kids. It's not that they don't want to take them. In some cases they can, and in other ones they cannot. So like, there are schools that handle they're like specific for children with disabilities, and there are schools that have doing a tremendous job with kids that learn in a different way. But also they look at it case by case. So like it is illegal in the United States to discriminate. Right. So like, they use the word discrimination very lightly to say that they can do all these things. So bullying happens all across. It can happen in a public school, it can happen in a private school, it can happen anywhere. So the reality is, like, what we believe is that kid should have option regardless of what system you are. So if you're bullied and they didn't do anything, like, as a parent, you want that to be addressed. And I will tell you, like, I had an issue recently in summer camp, and I like how they handle it. Like, and that's what I stay. Mm-hmm. I was like, great, thank you for handling it. But if somebody would have told me that my kid has to sit there day after day, and I hear this from our community a lot, and they do nothing, like, how do you feel about that?
I interviewed 2 episodes ago, or maybe it was 3 episodes ago, but I interviewed a woman whose son committed suicide. He went to the same high school that I went to. And in the days leading up to his suicide, he went to his counselor and told his counselor that he was being bullied and having trouble in a class and needed to be moved out. And she said, I can't do anything for you. You have to go to the dean. And he didn't go to the dean. And 5 days later, he committed suicide. And so she was talking about, how they were thinking about pursuing a lawsuit. And I've had plenty of experiences with negligence, and because I went to school here, I grew up in Nevada. So I went through, I started in public school when I was younger, moved to a private Catholic school for safety reasons. My mom moved us. And then I went to a public high school. So I am a product of CCSD. I lived it. I breathed it. I have plenty to say about it. We'll kind of jump into it later. But before that, I wanted clarification on something because I'm not obviously as well versed in school choice as you are. So my understanding is limited to what I've done at work for AFC. So from my understanding, every pupil or every student at a school there's like a per pupil funding.
Correct. So it's this federal funding that comes from out of state, from like federal, right? And then there is a state funding, and that all combined, it becomes to an X amount of dollars. So let's say a couple years ago, it was 10,300 here in this state. Then it went to 11,300, and now it should be like around 13,300 per student per year.
Okay, and so that is a combination of federal funds and state funds.
Correct. So let's say about 6,000 state, and like it's less at the federal level than the state level. So let's say, I don't know, like I'm just guesstimating here, 5,000 at the federal level and the other 8,000 at the state level. Okay. And this is why this is discussion over taxes comes every single year, because some people believe that the only way to have more money for public school is if you increase property taxes, and a lot of the Nevadans like basically say we don't want our taxes to go up. But that has been one of the discussions, because every single year advocates for traditional public schools come asking for more money, claiming that what we have is less than national averages.
Okay. And so with school choice, would that money, if they were to go, to a charter school or a magnet school or a private school, would those federal and state funds follow them to that
No,
school?
That's the difference between a tax credit program.
Okay.
So a tax credit program, that money doesn't come from public education. So it's a different revenue path. So essential to say that money will go away, what they're basically saying is, because I don't have that student, I basically don't get the $13,000, but nothing the student is being educated in another system. So, but it's not taking money away. They actually still get the federal funding. They just wouldn't get the state funding. But that money doesn't come away from them. Mm-hmm. It's just like that kid never went there. Okay. So that money comes from a different pot of money from businesses that donate in exchange of tax credit. So in the state of Nevada, we have 6 different organizations are called serving granting organizations, and they go and fundraise, and they grant a scholarship. It's a different pot. So you have, apples and oranges. Apples go to public schools and oranges goes to opportunity scholarship. This program is very, very, very small. It's less than half of 1%. It's very tiny. Mm-hmm. And essentially, I would like to see a larger percentage of kids being able to access, because we know that CCSD is one of the largest school districts in the country and is doing a terrible job at helping our kids to be successful. So we need to be able to create all kind of options: micro schools, homeschooling, opportunity scholarships, ESAs for children with disabilities, like different types of programs. Mm-hmm. So we can diversify the path a little, and let's say in the perfect world we could have 10% of options. But at this very moment, we have a very limited options.
So is what I just described, where the funds would come from the same pot as traditional public schools, is that happening around the country? Is that still considered a form of school choice?
There are forms of school choice are called the universal ESA. They take the money, follow the student. So the state revenue would go with them, and that money comes from the same pot.
So that's not in every state.
That's not in every state. So for example, Arizona has that. They have a universal ESA program. I believe 60 or 70,000 60 or 70,000 students are participating in the program currently. And what they do is that essentially the state money follow the student, and they can go anywhere they like. But they had different types of school choice programs for a very, very long time, large different programs. And you're seeing it, it's brand new. I can't give you much data on that because the reality is that I don't know how it's working. But you have seen that ESA became more popular because it's financially more sustainable. Mm-hmm. It's a program that essentially says hey, if you're not educating the kid, you still get federal funding, but that money that we would have allocated that was also my taxes that I'm paying goes away with my kid. So like it avoids this other, like the process that we have here is more highly convoluted and more difficult because they have to be racing and competing among the different organizations to like fund the kids. Here is simple. So like also like the other argument to be made is that, for example, parents that send their kids to private schools, they also have to pay those taxes that go to the school district that they never use. So it is essentially talking about how we just think about the student versus like funding for one versus the other. So like the money that we pay in taxes it has always meant to be for kids and not for one particular system. So like as today, for example, I don't know, I pay some money to go to University of Nevada to pursue my PhD. It's not 100% free. I have to pay a little bit of money here. And I essentially was my choice to attend this particular school. So, and the state gets a little money there. But if I would choose to go to a different, like, I don't know, to CNN or the State College of Nevada, they're not arguing that. Like, we have choice in every single other form except from in K to 12. And that problem has brought us where we are today.
Yeah. And that's one of the, I mean, I don't want to say it's more important, but yeah, that's when you're developing as a child. So your education in those early years is, basically more important than your higher education because they're formative. So kind of on that note, in what ways, I know we've kind of touched on it briefly in terms of like bullying and failing the kids in academics, but what are some of the biggest ways that you feel like the traditional education system fails to meet the needs of children, whether it be, on a national level or, we can start specifically here in Nevada because there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, so I think that it's pretty consistent. Like if you look at the NAEP score, which is the National Progress Report Card, you see pretty consistently like Hispanics are like 20% below nationwide. So if you look here in Nevada, it's worse, of course. Like, and post-pandemic, it was even worse because they lowered the requirements, like just to look good in the report cards. So you have a very diverse population in this state, and like I think that the struggle is how we educate a very diverse population, and sometimes not knowing how to do it, and they look at each student as they were the same.
Yeah.
So each student is not the same, and they have, we're human. And it has become so large. So, like, there has been, like, initiatives to break the school district, to make it smaller, but they continue thinking that they can do it all. And they have, it's a broken system that has been mismanaged. They're in the business of everything, not just education. So, like, they want to be in the business of having their own buses, having their own lunches, like doing all these other things instead of focusing on how do we serve our students better.
Yeah.
Charter schools, for example, what they have done is that they cut the bureaucracy and they're able to change curriculum however they want to. And that's why they have been successful. And I have spoken, for example, with the Pinecrest Foundation, no Pinecrest Foundation, with the Pinecrest schools, not that long ago. And they became one of the best ones, like 5 stars, in all the states.
Nationally ranked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I asked them why were they better, the answer was so simple. It was like, we're able to make in-house decisions.
Yeah.
Like if we're seeing something that is trending that like, employers want, we start teaching that to our students. When we are seeing that our kids are not doing well, we are professionals and we make tweaks to our curriculum to make it better for them. Like CCSE are not able to do that. They have to pass through all the bureaucracy, red tape, and that it is one of the biggest issues. And I think that's where we fail our students over and over and over. And I know, in particularly, like for example, as Hispanic, in many different cases, if you give me a test, I'm gonna be 10 times slower taking that test.
Yeah.
Simply because English is my second language. So you have a lot of English language learners. They took out the requirements of read by grade 3, and they continue like just simply saying lower expectations so we can meet the scores.
Yeah.
Instead of really thinking like, hey, like how do we put higher expectations for our kids? We believe that they can do it, and we help them get there instead of thinking how much money we can get. More, we need more, because more money is going to solve the problem. And it hasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, in the last time, like the 15 years that I lived here, we continued the same. And we're going to continue the same if we continue doing the same things.
I have so much to say about this type of stuff because, like I said, I grew up in this system, and I really started to. I did very well in school, so I graduated as a valedictorian twice. I was top 1% in high school and in college. I had a 4.0 in college and then a 4.8 in high school, which is where they cap the GPA. So I found a way to perfect the system, right? And it was so hard for me. I have really bad ADD. It's super hard for me to focus on anything for a long period of time. It was taking me so long to do well in school because not only am I performing at that level, right, where I'm like a perfectionist and I have to do it right and I'm redoing things to get a better grade. I'm taking it in for review by my teachers. But then it's also just hard for me to do it in general because I have ADD. So it took such a toll on my mental health to be that successful. I did it, but it cost me a lot. I still feel tired because I did it for 8 years, right? Where I went to college, or I went to high school for 4 years, then immediately started here at UNLV. So I was performing at that level consistently for 8 years. From the time I was, 14 years old till I was 22, it's exhausting. And now I feel like I'm out of energy for the rest of my life because I gave that everything I had. And it should not have been that hard. It doesn't mean
Correct.
that good things don't take a lot of hard work. But it should not have been that hard and it shouldn't have cost me that much. And I was ignored. So I'll never forget I watched this video in high school. I watched quite a few videos in high school. I had a good English teacher one year who was open to having conversations about this stuff. And it was a TED Talk by Ken Robinson. And it was basically, I think he's British, but he was talking about the American education system. And I don't know if you would know the history of this, but our education system was founded at the time of the Industrial Revolution. So it's literally modeled after a factory system.
Yeah, it's perform to the score. That is not measuring how, and this is what I say. Like a school choice is just way more about the scores. And they're always saying and trying to measure school choice with scores. This is an emotional thing. Parents, I don't care if my kid is an A superstar. You know what I care about? That he is mentally stable, that he knows that he's loved, and regardless if he gets an A, a B, or a C, he knows that he's loved, and he has a whole entire life to prove himself, and he doesn't have to be proving himself at 6.
Yeah.
And the mentality here is if you're not an A all the time, you're a failure. And what it has happened is that has created these kids that get to high school thinking they're not good enough.
Yeah.
And I can completely relate to your story there because I, not like you, but, I actually wasn't getting A's and B's because I come from a really poor household. My mom didn't know how to read. And I struggled to pass grade to grade. So until 8th grade, I saw I wasn't smart. I saw I probably was the most stupid kid in the class. And that's what I told myself because I continued getting bad grades. My mom had to work late hours and I had to go with her. She was a single mom. We never did homework. It was just I show up every single day. It was amazing that they passed me grade to grade. But there was I had no basic information, no basic math, no basic reading skill, nothing. And then I get to high school and I start hanging out with the smart kids. And I was trading homework. I was I do the art projects for you. You help me with math.
Yeah.
So I was bargaining how to pass grade, how I'm going to pass high school because, the reality is I couldn't. I wasn't going to pass high school because of what they taught me. And I see these cases in so many cases. I never thought I was college material. I actually told myself I was stupid. I'm not smart. I don't deserve to go to college. And, it was the most depressing moment in my life. I'm 17, thinking I was taught my whole life that the only way out of poverty is with a quality education. The reality is I cannot get into a good university because I don't have the base. I don't have access to pass any tests. And we fail these kids. And in the U.S., we do exactly the same.
Yeah.
So when I'm going to be that's the sad story, right? The good story is that I've been in school for 11 years now, so I clearly managed how to do it. And I'm going to graduate, with a PhD this year, and I'm very open about my story. But I'm the first one in my whole entire family to do that. And, and I come to the U.S., like, starting from fresh, like, looking at this. And the teachers at my university always told me, like, you either look at what you cannot do or you try to do what you think you cannot do. And is that mentality what is going to help our kids? If we continue failing them and grading them just by grades, like, many parents change their kids because they just want them to be safe and happy. Because we have to work so many hours a day to feed our kids and our families that when we send our kids away from us, I want my kid to feel that he's loved, he's wonderful, and regardless of any obstacles we have, we're going to be able to conquer them together. So
yeah. And I felt this as a 17-year-old in high school. So I hit a point where I've always had I've had existential crises since I was like 14 years old. I don't know what is wrong with me, but I hit a point in high school where I was like 16 years old. I was, I had all A's. I was super involved. I was doing cheer, speech and debate, National Honor Society, all of it. And I hit a point where I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I literally don't understand why. I'm miserable doing it. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy being at school. The only thing I enjoy is hanging out with my friends, doing cheer. And I felt trapped because I'm like, I have no other option. And Coronado, in particular, the school that I went to, is extremely academically competitive. It's in a upper class area, so it's a very wealthy neighborhood. It's, and it translates in the student body. So you have a student body that's predominantly white, and parents are upper middle class, even higher in some cases. So they can afford the tutoring. They can afford everything they need to make their kids successful. The kids aren't having to work to help support the family. There's not external stressors. Not that there's still not mental health issues there. There certainly is, obviously, but it's different than like a school in North Las Vegas. So it's extremely hard to do well at that school and to stand out. It's very competitive to the point where it's toxic. You can feel like the academic pressure on the student body, and they give it's been a minute since I went there, obviously 5 or 6 years, but when I was there, they gave an intense amount of homework. That's all I was doing was homework. And I would be up until 1, 2 a.m. regularly because I would have my clubs before school. I'd go to school. I'd have cheer after school. Then I would have to go to the gym. And then I start my homework after I eat and have dinner, shower,
and
all
it's
that.
go.
All the time. I'm exhausted. And so I hit a point where I was like, this can't be normal. So I, being the person I am, I looked up the CCSD handbook and I started reading the homework policies. Yeah. And I'm like, this can't be. I'm 16 years old doing this because I'm so fed up. So it's winter break and I'm literally going through the CCSD policy and reading if they have some kind of limitation or standard for how much work you're allowed to give the students. And in the handbook, it says, that holidays and weekends should ordinarily be free for outside activities and that there should be, limited homework that's assigned. And I'm like, well, that's not happening. And so I went to my principal and had an appointment with him and sat down with him and said, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. There's a lot of other kids that are struggling. I want to do well. I'm going to continue to do well. I don't understand why we're getting all this busy work, why all of this work is being put on us. I don't get it. And I got emotional because I felt like I didn't know what else to do, and I'm trying, and you're my last stop because I don't know what else to do. And we had a conversation for 2 hours one day in his office after school. And he is, I'm gonna be conservative about what I say about him because we have a history, and we're not really on great terms. But what happened is he came across as if he wanted to help me and as if he was going to help me. And what it ended up being was him sending me on a wild goose chase and to keep me busy and to keep me occupied and to make me feel like I was doing something, but not actually caring or giving a shit about anything that I said. He said, I'm going to treat you like a college student, and I'm going to tell you, bring me data. Bring me something that shows me that you're getting too much homework. So I did, because I'm like, okay, even though it's ironic that he's giving me more work on top of me saying I'm struggling with my mental health because I can't keep up, assigns me another project. I go out on my own. In my own free time, I meet up with a teacher. I say, I need help with this project. That teacher helps me build out these forms where it's like a homework tracking sheet. And we print out like 500 copies. I'm going to teachers across the school, asking them to participate. Hey, can you offer this to your students? Can you maybe give them extra credit for filling this out? I just need them to track it. I'm collecting the paper. I'm putting the data in an Excel sheet, and it's taking me like hours. Like, I feel like I'm doing a thesis, and I'm 17 years old doing this in the middle of trying to graduate high school. And I hit a point where I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. I'm like, he's not helping me. He's not trying to help me. He doesn't care about this. He doesn't want to see these numbers.
This wasn't the right fit for you.
And yeah. And what I'm asking for is just stop giving us busy work. Just care. Just look a little harder into the issue. It's your school. This is your student body. It's our mental health. He still doesn't care about those kids. And I learned a hard lesson that day about bureaucracy, about systems, about people in positions of power that are only there to serve themselves, which is the majority of CCSD, because I actually had it's a separate issue that I'll talk about at a different time, but I got into a whole battle with CCSD over their valedictorian policy. So I ended up in like the chief academic officer's office at CCSD. So I've had so many interactions with people that work high up in CCSD.
They don't care.
They don't care.
And so there was a story in the news not that long ago, a very sad story. This is what the news reported. A dad beat up another student, and he's going to jail. And everybody saw it, and I'm not saying that was right. A dad beat up another kid in a parking lot publicly in front of everybody. Terrible. The mom called me. The mom been asking CCSD to look into the bullying case for months. And what ended up happening is that mom couldn't make it on time that day. Dad did. And his kid was getting picked on and beat up, so he went and beat up the other kid, lost his temper. That dad ended up on jail. The kid ended up being kicked out. That was the solution. They never looked like... It had
to get to that point.
It had to get to that point for them to do something, because now it's on TV. So
that's how it goes.
And it's a lot of that happening. So like a mom told me too the other day, my kid was bullied into joining a gang, so I had to pull her out. So now she's doing virtual education at home. I don't speak English, and my kid mental health is suffering, and I don't know what to do. I try to put her in a charter school, and the waiting list is 2 years, and I'm begging to see if she can get accepted in a private school, but I don't have the money to pay for. So until then, my kid is going to have to continue at home depressed. Is that where it's like, this is, so when people told me about the argument about money, like money shouldn't even be part of the conversation. They have all the money in the world. The kids are the conversation, and everybody seems too concerned talking about, like, what do we do with the resources? What do we do with this? What do we do? Like, what about the kids?
Yeah.
It has always, so yesterday, so the Opportunity Scholarship used to get $11.4 million. This year it got 6.6. There are 6 organizations that compete for funding. The governor proposed allocating $3.2 million so kids wouldn't lose their scholarship because they compete and they're all like looking into the revenues. They decided to essentially say no to that. So we're going to have to let know 500 students that they're going to lose their scholarships. And nobody cares. So, and the governor fought really hard to get this money, and the Democrats just walk away. They just simply went and blame everybody for like having money, and you have this much money in reserve, and da-da-da-da. And they scream very loud, and they're very eloquent and very elegant. And this is what they do. And, I attended this university. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. Education should never be a partisan issue. But the reality is that they're like power drunk.
Oh, yeah.
And our community doesn't like pay attention to this. They hold this position just to get reelected. Like you see all the polling, you see all the statistics. There is no denial that we're failing our kids year after year. It's not just in reading levels. It's not just how they're doing in math. It's also their well-being, as you share with us today. Your story is not unsimilar than many of the other students. We have like the higher like suicide rate in the country during the pandemic, and our kids are suffering all the time. But they continue saying that money is the only solution. So they're going to continue doing this. They're going to continue increasing every single tax every single year on the name of a good, quality public education. And it's such a lie at this point. If they would have been doing a good job, there wouldn't be so many families interested in finding options as there is.
Well, and it's a counter argument to this idea that public schools say, oh, we don't want school choice because it would steal funds, which we talked about how that's not always the case. But even if it were to possibly steal funds from them, like let's say hypothetically.
Well, like redefine that, because like the money belongs to the student.
Right. So I don't mean steal funds from the school, but let's say, they were worried about losing money if school choice, were to be implemented. I've heard the argument that holds them more accountable, right?
Yeah.
Like now if kids have a choice, if parents have a choice
Correct.
to go to a different school, you have to give a shit about the kids. You have to do something.
Correct.
You don't want to ignore them, because if you're worried about the money, that they don't have the monopoly anymore. So it makes it more competitive, so that it holds them more accountable.
100%. Like if you have to like fight for your kids and make sure that they're staying with you, you're going to have to do a better job. And the reality is that they have just get, a pass. Oh, we try harder next year, but this year we want $2 billion. And that has been the argument for way too long.
Right. So do you know of any, off the top of your head, success stories of someone who has been able to switch schools because of
Plenty.
school choice?
So like very different, and they're all very different in their own ways. So there's a story about Daniel. So Daniel is going to be the first. He attends here UNLV. He's going to go to entrepreneurship.
Is this the one that we interviewed, or a different one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Daniel Reyes, he is finishing his degree in entrepreneurship. He's the first one in his family, and his mom, this kid used to come to home saying, I don't understand what they're saying or they're doing, and like they don't pay attention to me. And the mom used to cry, like I don't know what else to do, until he found an opportunity scholarship. And now he's going to graduate this year with a degree, like he's getting connected into the community, and he comes to participate, and he is so happy that he was able to do this. There's another case of Mia. All her siblings, used to attend the public schools, and they were doing fine. Only Mia wasn't doing good. All the other siblings stay in a public school, but Mia was able to attend Faith Lutheran, actually, that it is more like an expensive private school. They provided them a scholarship and a supplemental scholarship, and they realized what Mia needed. It was to get involved in different type of academics, dance, and get her out of her shell. And Mia she joins the dance team, become the first one in the dance team. And I went to interview one day Mia. And Mia was so busy that she was so offended that I would interrupt her time at her school because she was having a blast.
Oh, that's good.
So then there's another story, a mom. This kid was diagnosed with a disability, autism, type 1. And they basically sent him to a 1-star school. The mom went to the school. She says, absolutely not. I am just simply not want to send my kid here. So he is going to a private school right now where there are 9 kids in her classroom. The kid is reading, doing really, really well. And the mom is very, very happy about this. So there's plenty of stories of success. The reality is the program is so small. There's thousands of kids on a waiting list, and we have not been able politically to move the needle because simply they are just unaccountable. They can do whatever they want. So the teachers union are very, very powerful in this state, and they're all against it. Even Culinary Union was against it, testifying against it yesterday. And they have no business on this, but they decided that they don't want a school choice. And then you have the teachers union, the state teachers union, the NSEA, against it. So there's a lot of different groups, political groups that donate to the campaigns of Democrats in this state. And they have decided that they don't want this. And our community doesn't know. So because these people goes publicly and say that they are for the community, that they have, that they support minorities, and then they just vote against them. And our community in many different cases don't care about politics. They actually think politics are corrupted, and they have all the right to think so, because the reality is it is. And we don't get involved enough to see these things. I was actually, I shared this nationally, so it's not a secret. I was a Democrat when I came to, the U.S. I thought that, Democrats represent me because as a first-generation immigrant, they say that they have, my views. But what I ended up learning is that they're against a school choice. When in this particular state, and I'm not saying that that's happening in every single state. In Florida, there's plenty of Democrats that actually support school choice. It just varies depending on the state. But in this state, I learned that they don't support it. And some of them told me they do, but quietly, and they don't want the teachers union to know so they don't lose their political careers.
Sounds about right.
And I was like, but this is sad. So you care about, so they will share their secrets and things, but they won't publicly say it.
Do anything about it.
So they're afraid of their own shadow. And until we don't have young people, community members to look at the political system and say, we're all fed up with it. It's sick. It's we don't hold people accountable for any party. This shouldn't be Republicans versus Democrats. It should be about kids. But every single time, the only ones that support it here is, and the Republicans are in super minorities in the state. And the governor has been very public about supporting a school choice. And because he has been public, now they've been livid, trying to kill it. Because he wants it, because he knows it's a popular issue. And he knows that the community wants it. So because he said, I support opportunity scholarship, now they're trying to kill the program and cut 500 kids out of it.
Well, and what you're saying about how it shouldn't be a partisan issue, it should be about the kids. I mean, that's what I believe about any issue in America, is that it shouldn't be, oh, that's what Democrats believe, so as a Republican I can't support that, or that's what conservatives, Republicans tend to believe, so as a Democrat I can't support that. And that's so much of what it is in American politics, because it's about money, it's about power. It's never, I say this in every episode, they don't care about us. It's never been about us. And that may sound jaded, it may sound cynical, but honestly, there's plenty of people in the American population that believe that and that have given up because it feels like it's too much to conquer. How do you do something about that? How do you change your entire government, not realizing
you get involved
that they're this percentage of the population, right? This is our government.
And they make all the decisions.
Right. But look at how many of us there are, right?
Yeah.
So the reason that they want us to fight about religion, fight about race, fight about politics is because it blinds us to the fact that they are the problem, not us, not each other, because then we don't bind together, then we don't unite, then we see you're different, you're Democrat, you're Republican, you're a minority, I'm white, you're this, you're that, and it separates us.
Yeah.
And it keeps us busy and it keeps us
fighting and keep us, the same thing. I ended up learning, I don't agree with everything. I do agree with Republicans on a school choice is the one thing I do agree with them. But it's sad that we can't get it passed. And they've been fighting in this state for a very long time. They have been supporters of the Opportunity Scholarship. This year has been the worst years for school choice in this state. And the worst, you're seeing thousands of teachers protesting because they're starting the school year with 1,200 teachers less. That should tell us that not even the teachers are buying it anymore. Nobody cares about the system. We're all fed up. And the elected officials continue with the same machine. More money will fix it. And it hasn't. Until we don't listen to them, what they want, what are their concerns. You are the owner and we treat them with respect. We're not going to be able to fix public education. Teachers need to have a voice in their classroom.
Yeah.
and need to be respected as the professionals they are. We don't do that, first of all. So like we leave up to the bureaucrats to make all the decisions. And families that like simply, like for example, I love the school my kid is going now. It's a private, but it has bilingual education. And they really value different nationalities and cultures. And it is essentially what this school is all about. It's a very diverse school, and my kid is really happy. Their main focus is we're going to teach you, but we're also going to have a blast. And he gets to play sports, music, like you name it. Mm-hmm. He is having a great childhood. And I have to pay, like I'm very, very lucky that I'm able to pay for it. And I plan to be a mom, and I save for a long, long time to be able to do it. But I don't know, like if I couldn't do that, like so many families, I don't know what I do. Mm-hmm. Like honestly, I don't know how would it feel good sending my kid to a place that makes him unhappy. And I really, really deeply feel for all these families that are put in this spot. And the only solution that the government has is like, I'm so sorry. You keep waiting until we fix public schools, because you have to just keep waiting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like, so any parent would have that worry, right? And there's plenty of families in Las Vegas that are struggling with that very issue. You have a unique issue because, for your son, I'm assuming he speaks Spanish as well?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, for you and a lot of the cases that you shared, like with Daniel and the students that we interviewed for our video, they're bilingual, or English may be a second language. Which adds another layer and another barrier that makes it difficult for them to learn. Do you feel like you gravitate towards cases like that because you also came from a Spanish-speaking country?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, yeah. I'm completely, like, I feel like they don't, like, my community is I always say we're not the pobrecitos, which is like, we're not like the poor little people. Like, you have not learned how to maximize our talents. We're bilingual. Our brain thinks differently. We actually like working with a bilingual brain is really, really incredible and amazing. And there's like very little information on that. So I always feel like for like how they don't understand how to work with moms like mine. My mom came from poverty. She didn't know how to give me formal training. She couldn't read to me. But like I usually told moms, like, it doesn't matter in what language you read to your kid. Your kid is going to develop a skill set that he's going to be able to use later on in life. The important part is that you read to them. Right. But they're teaching them that you only can read to them in English. So I definitely fight. Like, I fight for all communities, don't get me wrong. But I fight a little bit harder for my community because I feel like I can be a voice for them. Mm-hmm. And in many different cases, like, you're embarrassed to share your story. Like, for me, say that my mom couldn't read, it wasn't necessarily something that I always have shared. This is the first year I shared publicly that. And I decided to share, like, at all times in front of, like, a legislative committee. And I'm really proud of that because, like, it shows all the battles that I have to go through in a system that it wasn't made for me, in where I grew up thinking that I wasn't smart, to show the world that I was. Mm-hmm. And essentially, I gravitate to that. But I also am a firm believer that you have to, like, do a deep look at yourself. And it takes a lot of work. And essentially stop believing what you're told and fight against those. Like, so, like, I hope to be an example for my community one day and for the little kids that are watching, that you can let your impediments stop you, or your English barriers, or having English as a second language, or giving interviews even in English. It was something that I was afraid of doing. Or just be who you are and let them see you and have them make a decision. So, I gravitate to help them because I know that they need help, and I know that they've been silenced and scared for a very long time. And I know that many, many different moms really care about their kids, and they just don't know how to help them. And we can be essentially that bridge that they need to be able to connect them, like, and to tell them you are capable, you can do anything you want. You came to this country to give a quality education to your kids, and you deserve to have it. And it's not just like, but it goes for any kid. Like poverty shouldn't be what stop you, and having a quality education is what is gonna open doors. I see it with my mom. My mom comes from a farm. There were 9 sisters, and they sent her to work at the age of 9. Wow. yeah, imagine how difficult it is for her. And she had to raise me as a single mom. And I see so many kids and so many students that sometimes come to like the university and they get intimidated by it and they leave. I was one of them. I almost quit several times because I thought I wasn't good enough. And then one day I convinced myself, hey, no, you are good enough. So like when you have the imposter syndrome, like put it in your pocket and walk away and say you're super woman, you're capable, you can do it. And so I hope, like I'm really pushing really, really hard. I do a lot of, like now I maximize my talents and I do a lot of interviews in Spanish and I inform my community of what they can do to be in a better spot. So I work as a connector instead of thinking, oh my goodness, I cannot do it. English is an impediment. I remember like when I started grad school and they used to give me 100 pages, I used to cry. There were so many different words.
I would cry and I speak English. So.
I did. Many different times. But essentially it ended up helping me because now I can write, as you see. I probably can write better than I can speak, that, like, to be quite frank. But it's amazing, like, the transformation I've seen in my skills as much, as I keep going, it keeps getting just better and better. So, like, we just really don't understand how, humans, languages, and all that works yet to the full, totality.
Right. Well, you've certainly blown expectations out of the park because you're getting your PhD, first of all, and then you're getting your degrees in things that are language heavy, so marketing, communications, public affairs, that all requires a lot of English speaking. Yeah. So you didn't take the easy path.
No, I did not.
Sure.
I went here's the hardest one. But, again, we're capable of doing anything. The only limitations we have are in our brain.
Right.
And we just have to, you are anything that you say that you want to be. And the more, the more that you keep at it, the better you get. And you're going to have to fail several times to get there. And that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Is there anything that you wanted to add before we close out?
No. One thing.
Yeah.
So visit the, I work for the American Federation for Children. So you can visit our website, American Federation for Children, or you can also visit that we have our Hispanic efforts there too. So if you know families looking for options, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can also find me on Twitter, Valeria Gurr. I'm very spicy there, so don't be afraid.
Super spicy.
Super spicy. And I have an Instagram, and I just try to connect with the community. And if you're interested in volunteering for a school choice or being an advocate, please follow me.
Perfect. Thank you. I was actually going to say that I'm going to have all your social media available. So if people want to get in contact with you, they can find it through my social media, including YouTube. And if you guys want to continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll have Valeria's email available as well. And I will see you all again in 2 weeks to talk more elephants.